I'm working without a net, so y'all gonna have to give me a little time to find things. But as I was studying, I got notes on something else, but it's gone. So we're gonna do the prophecies of. See, Daniel had, when you read the book of Daniel, Daniel had more insight on the political scheme of the last days than any of the prophets. I mean, God gave him great insight on what the last days would be like. And so we're just going to go through Daniel and look and see some of the things that he wrote. We'll start over in the second chapter of Daniel. The king Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, and Daniel interpreted his dream. We'll start reading about verse 37. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And this is the Babylon king that had took over Israel at the time. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fields of the heavens hath he given unto thine hand, and has made thee ruler over them all. Thou art the head of gold. In other words, if you go back and read all that, he had this dream of this great big image like a man. I mean, if we'll turn back just a minute, in verse 28, we need to look at that. There is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days, the last days. He's saying, okay, Nebuchadnezzar, I'm going to interpret this dream, but all of it ain't on in your time. I'm going to show you what's going to happen in the latter times. But now it started out with Nebuchadnezzar, which was Babylon. And now, Daniel was a Jewish prophet. All the prophets that you see in the Bible were Jewish prophets. And their prophecies, most of the time, first started out with how it was going to affect Israel, and then moved through time. But Nebuchadnezzar had this dream of this great idol, this monstrosity. And Daniel told him that he was the head, the king was the head of gold. And after thee, in other words, Nebuchadnezzar was counted the same as Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar was the head of Babylon, so he was Babylon. And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth or all the land. And after Babylon, they came the Medes and the Persians, and after them Greek. And I mean, you can look in history and see all this. And after them, this fourth kingdom was Rome. And verse 40 says, and the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. In other words, Rome was going to kind of engulf all these other empires. And whereas I saw at the feet and toes part of the potter's clay, and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it the strength of iron, for as much as I saw as the iron mixed with miry clay, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas I saweth iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. He said this Roman Empire would be very strong militarily, that the people itself was not mixed together. I mean, they didn't like each other, but they were gathered together under this kingdom. Now, Rome, got to one place. They were so set on entertaining their people that they had to go outside of Rome and hire people to fight in the army. And that's really what helped bring them down. But now, the old Roman Empire, folks, has been restored in the European Union. And the people that settled America came out of that old Roman Empire. But we'll see Daniel goes through it several times and brings these things out. But I like this, verse 44. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. For as much as I saw it that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, that it broke in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, silver, and gold, the great God has made known to the king, which shall come to pass hereafter. In other words, he said, God shall set up a kingdom. This stone cut out of the mountain, he's representing Christ. that he's going to destroy all of man's governments and set up a government that will never be destroyed. And Daniel said this, the dream is certain, and the interpretation, therefore, sure. He said, what I'm telling you is certain. And you can look at history and see these great empires that rose and just kind of swallowed up each other. And Rome was the last one that he saw there. And Revelation, Daniel, and as he's doing his prophecies, he symbolically he brings forth all these beasts, the lion and the bear and all this. And he sees them scattered out because they're representing different governments, different empires that comes along. But Revelation 13 sees them all together. So in this end time, what he's talking about is all these governments that has been in the past will come together in the end time as a one world government under Antichrist. All right, let me find this next prophecy. But Daniel saw all these great empires come and go. Chapter 7, Daniel. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and vision of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven drove upon the great sea, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. Now, part of what he's seeing here is the same thing he just told Nebuchadnezzar over there. These empires was going to raise up. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. And I beheld till the wings therefore were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet of a man, and a man's heart was given unto it. Remember Nebuchadnezzar, God stripped him of his kingdom there, because he walked out one day and said, this is great Babylon which I built. Remember that story? And lost his mind, and for a time he was just out there in the field. He was crazy. So this is Babylon again. And behold, another beast, a second like a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth of it, and between the teeth of it, and they said thus unto it, arise and devour much flesh. Now here we got the Medes and the Persians. Now these 3 ribs is probably representing the 3 empires that the Medes and Persians kind of engulfed, and that was Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. But see, all these beasts he saw is just symbolic of these great empires that rose up and conquered Israel at that time, and But we see these things, a lot of folks say, well, that ain't got nothing to do with us. It's got everything to do with us, folks. And Jesus told us to watch, didn't he? Watch. Now, a lot of folks are about watching for his coming. Now, I'm going to tell you, you ain't got to be watching for his coming. You got to be watching so you'll be ready for his coming. Hey, every eye's going to see him when he comes. The Bible said every tongue will confess. So every eye will see him. You're not going to miss him. But he warned, and the apostles warned, that we should be we should study, and that we should keep our eyes open and be aware and watch, so that we'll be ready when he does come. See, just the fact that he's coming doesn't mean you're going to be ready. If we're going to be ready, it's because we know where we're at in time. It's because we stand firm on what God has said. And this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl, and the beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given unto it. Now this is probably representing Greece. And after this I saw in the night visions, and here's Rome again, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth, and it devoured and broke in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet of it, and was diverse from all the other beasts that was before it, and it had 10 horns. Now horns are symbolic of points of power. 10 nations. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. Now he's seeing the Antichrist rise out of this old Roman Empire, out of the restored one, before whom there was were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and behold, the horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. And I beheld till the thrones were cast down. In other words, all of man's governments is going to fall, folks. And the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like the pure wool, and the throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from him. Thousands ministered unto him. In other words, there was more than he could count. And 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, and the judgment was set, and the books were opened. And when you see these things like thousands and thousands times 10,000, he's just saying it's more than we can count. It's just a great multitude. And I beheld then because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. Now you see that Daniel even saying he's speaking some great words. In other words, he's going to promise the people a whole bunch of stuff. And how many knows now where we're at in time? A lot of folks, if they're promised something, they ain't got to see it. You ain't even got to give it to them. If they promised it, they're going to follow. Yeah. That's showing up right now, folks. I was noticing this evening where y'all is president. Y'all's president had more of an approval rating than Trump did.
They lie about everything. Some other lie about that too.
Well, they may not be lying though, because hey, again, if you promise folks stuff, there's a lot of folks that fall in on it. You ain't got to give it to them. How many times have we been promised stuff and voted people in and never got it? Keep voting them in. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. Wait a minute, I missed one, didn't I? I beheld them because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, and I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed and given to burning fire. In other words, Christ is going to come and destroy the Antichrist. Amen. Concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. And I saw the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given unto him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Now, folks, if we look back at history, and everything that Daniel said, all these great empires that Daniel used symbolic, they happened. Yes. They happened. I mean, they're there, they came, and in order, they came and were dissolved into other nations, into other empires. But folks will look at that and still doubt that this part is true. But folks, all of it's true. Jesus will come, Jesus will destroy all of man-made government, and he will set up a government that is a righteous government that will last forever. You'll never see a time when he'll be up for a re-election. Nobody gonna vote him in or out. No. He's coming, and we just need to be ready and make sure that we know the time that we're in. He said, "These great beasts which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever." That's our promise, folks. Amen. And we were promised that we would rule and reign with Christ. He has made us to him, through Jesus, folks, kings and priests under Christ. Yes. And what he's doing now in the earth is gathering a government. You know, we all see where Jesus talked a lot about the kingdom of God. Well, every kingdom has a government. Every kingdom. If you don't have a government, it's not a kingdom. It's just a bunch of scattered people. But Jesus has set up a kingdom. And the Bible calls us kings and priests unto him. Not because we were good, but because he was. And what he's doing now is gathering a government. "And I would know the truth," verse 19, "of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, whose teeth was iron and a nail of brass, which devoured and broke in pieces and stamped the residue with his feet, and of the 10 horns which were in his head, and of the other that came up before, whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. And I beheld the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them." Again, Daniel is a Jewish prophet speaking to a Jewish nation, but he's speaking about the condition of the whole world. And the Antichrist, folks, he'll make a covenant with the Jews for 3.5 years. Yes. And we'll say that again. Daniel saw that too. Then in the middle of that 3.5 years, he will break that covenant and start to try to destroy them. Because the Jews, out of that Jewish nation, came the Messiah, came all the promises out of that Jewish nation. And the Antichrist knows, just like every demon knows, if he could destroy the last Jew, he could make the prophecies fail, because it's intertwined with the Jewish nation. I would help the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and tread it down, and break it in pieces. Now even the Roman Empire, folks, now he saw the Roman Empire, but now we've faded into the end time. The Roman Empire didn't have the whole earth. This kingdom will have the whole earth. It'll be a restored Roman Empire, and it will have, everybody will give their consent to this one world government. And we talked about the other day, the experts are warning of a global food shortage. And you get a food shortage, you get famine, especially the folks that has never dealt with famine. And hey, you can lead a lot of folks by just standing up and saying, I can get you food. I can get you medical assistance. You can get folks' attention. So all this things that we see building, folks, is just building toward a coming Antichrist who will be the leader of a world gathered together. Now, when we say one world government, the nations are not just going to give up who they are. They're just going to give consent to government to the Antichrist will be the face of it all. They're going to just give consent to him. In other words, there'll still be a Russia, there'll still be a China, there'll still be a nation called America. There'll still be Saudi Arabia, there'll still be all this. But hey, in a world that's got a food shortage, in a world that's got nuclear weapons, they're going to need somebody that they can look to as the leader. The Antichrist will be that somebody. In Egypt, it'll be that somebody. He'll be the face of it. Verse 25 says, talking about the Antichrist, he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. You see this? And shall be given in his hands until a time and times and the dividing of time. 3.5 years. It'll be given into his hands. 3.5 years. Now before he comes into power, folks, the church will be gone in the rapture.
Yes.
But we'll see in a few minutes that the Jewish nation has still got 7 years promised them where God will exclusively deal with them. All right, let me see where we're going now. Let's go over to 9. I'm going to read 1 out of 8 before we can get over to 9 because he's got some here in 8. Well, if you want to just read this, we'll just stop in 8 and then go to 9. 8 and 23rd. We'll start at 23rd verse in the 8th chapter, and it's talking about the Antichrist. In the latter times of their kingdom, talking about these kings that we're just talking about, when the transgressions are come to a full. Now, do you see that? When the transgressors has come to a full. In other words, when the Antichrist comes in, it'll be because folks rejected God entirely. So the transgressor will become to the full. A king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. In other words, he'll have a lot of knowledge about how to do things in the natural. And his power shall be mightily, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people, Jews, the Jewish people. And through his policy shall he cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. So he's coming, and the Bible tells us, the New Testament tells us that Christ will destroy him with the brightness of his coming. But he couldn't come in power at all until people begin to push out God. People begin to deny God, and so he'll be another God that they can accept. But now let's turn over to chapter 9 now, and we'll start at verse 24. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon the holy city. Now we all know that, again, Daniel was a Jew. So when he says thy people, he's talking to the Jews. The holy city, he's talking about Jerusalem. And we've talked about this here before. Well, let's say it again. The 70 weeks is the Hebrew Shabuos, which means weeks of years. So when he's talking about 70 weeks, he's talking about 70 weeks of years. So that you can multiply 7 times 70. He's talking about 490 years. He said, it's 490 year span, Daniel, that I'm going to deal with your people. and upon the holy city to finish the transgression, make the end of sin. Now, how's he going to make the end to sins? By a man named Jesus, folks.
That's right.
And to make reconciliation for iniquity. Now, who reconciled us to God? Bringing an everlasting righteousness and seal of the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. In other words, it's going to be 483 years, if you want to fill it up weeks or years. And the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublesome times. Now you see, he said from the time going forth to restore and build Jerusalem, that came under Artaxerxes, and you can read about that over in Ezra and Nehemiah. He gave the order for the Jews to go back to their home and rebuild the wall. Remember that? But he said 483 years till Messiah be cut off. Now that leaves 7 years left out of the 490. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. In 483 years from the time that Artaxerxes gave the order to restore and build Jerusalem and the wall, Christ was on the cross in Jerusalem.
Yes.
He said he'd be cut off not for himself. Now here's a little insight right here. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end therefore shall be with a flood, and to the end of the war desolation to determine. Now the people of the prince that's to come. Now it was the Roman general Titus that came in and destroyed Jerusalem and destroyed the temple, burned it down. So we see out of that old restored Roman Empire, it's going to come the Antichrist. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, that's 7 years. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblations to cease, and for the overspreading abominations he shall make it desolate even until the end, and that determined should be poured upon the desolate. Now Christ talked about, when they talking to the Jews, when they seen the desolation of abomination spoken of by Daniel the prophet, this is what he's talking about. He will confirm a covenant with the Jews for 7 years. And in the midst of that 7 years, 3.5 years, he'll break his covenant and begin to try to destroy all of them. But when he sits down in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God, it's when the Jewish people is going to start trying to reject him. And Paul said that he would sit in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God.
Yes.
And we got a guy right today that makes the claim that he always thought he was a God. His name's George Soros, and he's a Jew. So that throws a little suspicion, doesn't it? But yeah, he was a Jew, a billionaire, and like I said, he said that he always felt like he was a God creature, that he was a little God, and he's destroyed a lot of nations, and about got this one. Am I saying he's the Antichrist? No, I'm saying he's got his application in. There's been several had the application in, but you see, there's 7 years left. See, when they crucified Christ at 483 years, that left 7 years that God has promised the Jewish people that he would deal with them like he did to start with. Now, again, we see something here. 70 years, that's 490 years. And remember when he came to Christ asking about forgiveness, and said, how many times should I forgive my brother? Remember that? And he said 7 times 70, that's the 490. Christ is saying, as long as God's forgiving you, you forgive your brother. That's what all that 7 times 70 was about. It came right out of Daniel. As long as God's forgiving you, you forgive your brother. And he's talking to the Jewish nation. And again, we have to understand as we read in the scripture, when he's talking about the Jewish nation and when he's talking about the church. And if you get those two mixed up, you've got everything mixed up, folks. Because there is going to be a raptured church. And the Jewish nation is going to have 7 years that God's going to deal with them.
Yes.
And in those 7 years, the 144,000 will be Jews, will be marked with the seal of God. They will realize that, hey, Jesus was who he said he was, and turn back to him. And those 144,000 will be 144,000 evangelists for the cause of Christ during the tribulation. And I know the Jehovah's Witnesses for a while talked that the 144,000 was Jehovah's Witnesses
Yeah, we got more.
until they got more than 144,000. So, but the Bible plainly says of the tribes of the children of Israel. So the 144,000 will be out of Israel. But they got 7 years left after when the church, that prophecy stopped when Christ was crucified, because the Spirit of God turned to the Gentiles because the Jews had rejected Christ. But that left them with that 7 years, and that 7 years will be that period of time between the rapture and the return, when the Spirit of God will move back to the Jewish nation one last time to gather the remnant of his natural people. Now we're over in chapter 11, and that's what we talked about a while ago. It's something that you came up with that, and this is what we had. Speaking of the Antichrist, verse 36 says, "And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god. And he shall speak marvelous things," and over you see this, how he's speaking great things. He will be speaking, folks, exactly what man is wanting to hear.
Yes.
About prosperity and peace. And you can do your own thing and be all right. And when you hear folks teaching that from the pulpit, no, that's the spirit of Antichrist. It's just like we said something Sunday about it, where Franklin Graham had posted a poll that he just saw. It said 39% across the board, across all denominations, 39% of the senior pastors now believe that you could go to heaven just by doing good works.
Yeah.
They were leaving Jesus out entirely.
Didn't have to.
You know, just if you do good works, you're gonna make it to heaven. 39, and folks, if that doesn't jar you, nothing's gonna jar you. That 39% of senior pastors are preaching their people, you can go to heaven just by being good. Folks, if you could go to heaven by just being good, then Christ sure did go through a lot of suffering, didn't he? It's not our works, it's his work. I believe it says that, don't it? As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. Our righteousness is his righteousness, given to us as a free gift, because we couldn't meet the standard. We couldn't meet the standard because we're in the body from our father Adam, which contains the seed of sin. But it's in verse 37, that's what we talked about a while ago. "Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any God, for he shall magnify himself above all." In other words, you sit down in the temple of God saying he's God. Now again, he would not regard the God of his fathers. That's absolutely a Jewish saying.
Yes.
Because the Gentile nations always had all kind of gods. So, you know, the Jews is the only one that was one God. So that's Jewish. And you can read it whichever way you want to read it. Neither shall regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women. And folks, if that's not homosexuality, I don't know what is. And like I said, folks try to get around that because they don't want to say anything against homosexuality. But hey, you reckon God didn't know that the time between Jesus and the Antichrist was going to be thousands of years? But like I said, I saw where a pastor had said, no, what he's talking about there was that the Antichrist was all Jewish women wanted to be mother of Messiah, and the Antichrist would be killing the Jewish babies. So he wouldn't regard the desire of women. No, he's funny as a $3 bill, folks. Let's just call it like it is. He's coming and he's funny as a $3. Why do you think that all of a sudden all over the world it's cool to be homosexual?
Yes. That's why.
That's exactly why. Is because the stage is being set for a man who's coming. Hey, if he'd have came 50, 60 years ago, that wouldn't have bought him no support. But now, hey, in our own government, if your skin color, your sexual orientation qualifies you to work in the government.
Yes.
You ain't got to have no other qualification. And you can look and you can see that, folks, how many that we've got in there. No qualification except skin color. More than that, we got one transgender woman. What's her name?
It's a him.
I know, but it's transgender. What is her name? But you know who I'm talking about, don't you? And the press secretary is funny.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he gathered all that he could gather. Yeah, oh, the world's full of it. But the thing about this, folks, I'm not against homosexuals. I'm against the sin that's killing them.
Yes, that's good.
And I'm not going to say that, hey, you all right being homosexual. No, you're not.
No.
And you will follow, if you've got that spirit now, you will follow this spirit when it comes.
Yeah.
In the beginning, he that made us male and female. He ain't changed his mind, folks. In his state shall he honor the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver and with precious stones and pleasant things. See, a God his fathers knew not until absolute Jewish. That's a Jewish mindset.
Yes.
His fathers knew not. A God his fathers knew not. Thus shall he do in the most strong hosts with a strange or a foreign God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land, talking about Israel, for gain. And folks, we've been trying to divide Israel for years, haven't we?
Yes. Right.
And have got it divided. The land that we call Israel over there now is just a minute part of what God gave them. But I'm going to tell you something, folks. When Christ gets back, every inch of land that God promised Israel through Abraham's covenant will be theirs. Every inch.
Amen.
Hey, you can't get a better deed than from the man that made the land. I mean, you can go up to the courthouse and get deed on stuff, but hey, if you get the deed from the man that made the land, ain't nothing going to top that. And he hadn't forgot what he gave them. But the man's coming, and again, what we're seeing right now with the homosexual movement is just making way for him. I remember when all this started, and they were saying, oh, we just want to be left alone. We just want to be left alone. And the more that was accepted, no, they don't want to be left alone now. They want you to agree with what they're doing. And folks, we need to love them enough to pray for them and to stand for the truth.
That's right.
See, we even come to a place now where a lot of folks are saying Christ was a homosexual. Oh, yeah, you saw that? He had 12 men that followed him. Come on, folks. Yeah, what was it? There was a, what was the name of that movie? I should know the name of that movie, but I don't. It's just slipped my mind. They based that on, again, he had 12 men following him. Yeah, and in those days, you wouldn't have had a woman out there following you,
No.
because they wouldn't have had it. Nowadays, you can have anything get by with it. But hey, in those days, really, a woman's word in that culture counted for nothing unless a man was a witness. But again, Jesus was exactly who he said he was. He still is. He still is exactly who he said he was. And as Daniel was finishing his prophecies over in chapter 12, he said this, and at that time shall Michael stand up, that's the archangel, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time, and at that time thy people, the Jewish people, shall be delivered, every one that is found written in the book. Now again, we had a religious organization that says Jesus was Michael before he became Jesus. But I'm going to tell you again, Jesus was never an angel. Jesus was the creator of angels, folks. See, Michael is the angel, said, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. He's the archangel. And many of them which sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. Now, Daniel saw a resurrection, but he didn't see the time separation. The New Testament brings out the time separation, that there'll be a righteous resurrection, and then there will be a resurrection of those that will stand before God to be judged. And again, there's a lot of Christians who has the fear of standing before God in the judgment. Let me tell you something. Christ took your judgment. The judgment that you stand before will just be where you're going to be at in the government seat. Your judgment has already been paid for at Calvary. You have no judgment. The Bible said he reconciled us to himself. He took our sins. Now, if he took our sins, what's God going to judge you on? Now you'll be part of the judge, part of the judgment. The great white throne judgment is not for those born again. The judgment seat of Christ, again, is simply to say where you're at in the government. And hey, you all have a place in the government. In a lot of what we see, a lot of what people teach is to be heaven. It's not heaven. Well, I mean, it is in the right sense of the word, but it's when you talk about New Jerusalem, he saw it coming down. It's the government seat of God. 1,500 miles square and 1,500 miles straight up. You can see that for a ways. That's the government seat. The Bible said, behold, the tabernacle of God is with man.
Amen.
And so, in a 1,500 square mile city, 1,500 up, got a lot of rooms. Jesus said, in my Father's house are many mansions, and I go to prepare a place for you. It wasn't that he was going to make another room. He's going to pick you one out. A lot of folks just see Jesus up there building. He was a carpenter, but his work's finished, folks. He's rested. But Daniel went through a whole lot of time. God showed him a whole lot of things, and all of it was absolutely right, absolutely correct. And we have prophets today that maybe sometimes they hit and sometimes they miss. But the Hebrew prophets never missed. And Isaiah called Cyrus by name 150 years before he was born.
Right.
Called him by name. Now that wasn't a guess, folks.
No.
Because God, who has already been, the prophets work from the Spirit of God. And God's already been in tomorrow and next year. He knows, when God's prophet spoke, there was no doubt that it was going to happen. Because God gave them the word, and they spoke it. And so the word they gave was God's word. And so it came true. It came true, and those that has not been fulfilled yet, hang on. Hang on. It's coming. And you heard me say one night we got a fellow here. It's been a lot of years ago now. Zechariah talked about that he would gather all nations in the end time to battle against Jerusalem. And he wouldn't have it. He said, not America, not America. We'll never stand against Jerusalem.
Yes. Here we are.
But hey, here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are. But folks, we're living in an exciting time. We live in a troubled time, but it's exciting. Just like the Bible talked about Christ when he, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, suffered the shame. The cross was not joy, but he saw beyond the cross. Us. He saw those. But see, again, the things that we face between now and the rapture, they're not going to be easy times. But don't discourage. Just know we're passing through those times to get to where we're going.
Amen.
And God hadn't forgot his promises. In Christ, his payment has been paid. And he's going to gather together that which he has purchased. Absolutely. Absolutely. Just as sure as you live and breathe. Just as sure as the prophet, these things that happen just exactly, all of it's going to happen just exactly like the word said. And when Christ was, as you read the prophecies, always remember, look and see who he's talking to. Because if you don't, that's where a lot of folks get that there's not going to be a rapture, because they see the 7 years when the Jewish people is going to be here. And they say, see, no, that's the church. No. After Revelation 4:4, the church is never seen on earth again until it comes back with Jesus. After Revelation 4:4, that's before any of the great judgments are poured out. Now, we're seeing some judgments falling now. But before any of the seals were opened, in chapter 6 of Revelation 4:4, the church is in heaven, already taken out. The bride of Christ is not going to go beaten down by the Antichrist. She's going to go without spot, wrinkle, or blemish. And those that are left will be here during the great tribulation. And don't do it. Don't do it. No use in doing it.
No.
Because he's bought us a ticket.
That's right. Go on the first load.
Go on that first boatload. Because if you think you think it's rough now,
Oh,
wait till there's no restraining power left on earth at all against the Antichrist, against the Spirit. You know, the tribulation saints will stand in fear of their life every minute. Because, hey, not only will the Antichrist be out to kill them, the people around will be out to kill them. Because to them, they will be the reason for all this stuff coming.